Okay, we're back. Welcome to part 2 of this kitchen time session. Repotting a couple of newish plants and some that have been around for longer. I won't say a long time, but they're all relatively new. They're all this year's plants, basically, apart from one, which was last year's, possibly the year before. We didn't get to do much last year, did we? We weren't allowed. Anyway, I have an assortment of pots. That one is specific for one plant, so that's actually been brought out for a plant. The others are to have some choices. There's a couple of sort of smallish ones, a couple of larger ones. That's two of the freebie ones that I got from Zygopetalum, the last order. We've got a couple of these opaque ones, although these are a bit big, but I think one of the plants is going to go in there. And then a couple of sort of one size down from there, but you know. So an assortment of pots basically to choose from. So we'll get those out of the way. And then that's the Burnham's medium bark, which is effectively, it's small. I mean, Sarah did say that the supplier she uses basically is, the grades seem to have reduced in size, so what they're calling medium is more like small, and what they're calling large is more like medium. So I've actually got what I call small and medium, although if you went there to buy some, it would be called medium and large. We've got some large chunky stuff over here to go in the bottom of pots where necessary. That came from Zygopetalum as well, and for things like cattleyas, this is brilliant. It's rock hard. Seems a bit of a waste to put it in the bottom of a pot as crocking, but the one thing you can virtually guarantee with that is that's probably not going to go off before the rest of the pot does, so it will serve its purpose as crocking for the life of the plant in that pot, rather than becoming wet and soggy in the bottom of the pot and, you know, taking the media down with it. And then we've got some cocoa husk that's actually been in soak some time because I want it wet. What I don't want is to use it dry out of the bag and then water the plant after I've potted it up, and in a day's time it's bone dry. Because when this stuff is dry, it takes a bit of getting wet. Whereas if you start with it wet, it stays wet for some time. But the bark, oh, and I forgot to say, the charcoal, that also came from Burnham's, will actually pull some of the moisture out of this. So it won't be soggy for long. Let's put it that way. Right, plants. We've got this. That's cleaned up quite nicely. Virtually all of the sphagnum in the middle came out, along with the roots that were dead in it, but it is two plants. This bit is separate. There's no point in separating it on the grounds it's going back in the same pot anyway, so just as well stay there. Save the disturbance. So that's going to be potted as is. Lots of very good roots on there. The problem with zygos is, if you get it wrong, they will dump their old roots, and then you end up with very few, and that's when the bulbs start to desiccate and it all goes wrong. So trying to keep the roots in pristine condition is paramount. Now this is the largest plant by far. That's why I bought out some of these opaque pots, because I think that's going to be just the right size for that. Yes. Now you have to bear in mind these are Zygopetalum hybrids, not species. Now you know, some of them, if they're named, you might be able to go and find out what species went into it, but the chances are you might have one species and a hybrid, and then you go back on that hybrid and find out it's a hybrid with a species, and it gets complicated. But what you have to accept is that most of the zygos that go into the hybrids are the terrestrial type from the very damp areas, rather than the epiphytes that live up the trees, which are, they're a different kettle of fish. And they probably wouldn't take to going in this type of media that I'm about to mix up. Anyway, we will put some chunky stuff in the bottom. I only need a layer here because the roots are going to go right down to the bottom of the pot straight away. So this plant's only just going to fit in here. Right, so the mix, then it's going to basically be a mix of the small bark and then a lot of the cocoa husk. And there is a lot here, but two of the plants are going to want quite big pots, and I might not have enough, so I may have to take a break and put some more into soak, because I'm not using it dry, not for these sorts of plants. Well, that will certainly be enough for this plant, looking at the size of the pot. We get that mixed in. The bark is now going to stick to this because it's wet, so I should get a nice balanced mix, if you see what I mean. And then I can clean my hands off, put the charcoal in, and then get my hands filthy dirty, of course. But I want the majority of this, so I will add some more in. If it's left over, it can go for the next plant. But I want the bulk of this medium to be the cocoa husk. I haven't cleaned it, I haven't taken the hairy bits out. It's mainly medium-ish chunks. There's a few big chunks in there, quite a lot of small chunks, because for a plant in the dim and distant, I actually sat down with a load of this and a pair of scissors and cut it up into tiny little pieces for a specific purpose. I did far too much, I had lots left over, so it just went in the bag for next time. So there's quite a lot of small pieces in there. So these roots will have some air around them because of what the media is, but they will have constant moisture, because these getting totally dry don't do them any good at all. Right, now we're going to get dirty mitts from the charcoal. I think if I shake it in, that'll at least stop my hand getting dirty, won't it? This is a smattering. It's difficult to judge how much of this is right because I haven't been using it long, but a smattering. As I said, it is difficult to judge whether you've got enough or not with the charcoal, but I mean, it is proper horticultural charcoal, and it is quite uniform, and it hasn't got anywhere near as much dust in it as the last flipping lot I had. If you take a bag full of charcoal, the last lot I got off of eBay, I had a third of a bag of dust. So a third of the cost was total waste, just got thrown away. So that wasn't very good, so I thought we'll try Sarah's, and Sarah's turns out to be pretty good stuff. Quite uniform in its size and very little dust. You can't really have charcoal with no dust, I don't think that actually exists. Tickling me throat. Right, so we need some in the bottom because the roots are going to go to the bottom. And because some of these are long roots, this has got to be a very delicate operation. And we will get these roots down there. Some of them may snap, and therefore at least half, from the snap onwards will die. But by twisting the pot gently, those roots go in there and are okay. I just heard one click, so one's just broken. Now the difficult bit, because this is wet, getting it down in amongst these roots is not easy. It's got to be done a tiny little bit at a time, with the minimum of pushing and shoving, basically. But what I don't want is a hole in the middle of the plant that's air. These roots need to be in contact with stuff, so where I can see the hole in the middle, I'm pushing it down the side and then flicking it inwards so that that piece in the centre has actually got media in it and it's not empty. There's the problem, if this was dry media, it would fall into that empty space. But because it's wet, it doesn't. You've got to help it. Obviously this process works pretty well, tapping it down, that helps drop it down. But again, that doesn't work anywhere near as good with dry media. It doesn't work anywhere near as good as it would if, with wet media. Dry media, that works brilliantly. It all falls into all the little spaces. Not with media that's wet. So under normal circumstances you wouldn't see me using wet media. But in these circumstances, because of the type of media, I am. Now, gentle pressing here, because these roots are fragile. If I push too hard, they will, if they don't break, they'll bruise, and if they bruise, they tend to keel over. Now, most of the roots have come away from the side of the pot now, where I've put some down the outside, which does allow me to do a bit of pushing down the outside. Which if you start doing that before you get some media between the edge of the pot and the roots, you'll break the roots. Oh, normally I'd have my thumb in there jamming this stuff in. Still, if we have to be gentle, we can. Now, successive waterings will help settle this media down. Yeah, at the moment it's a little loose. The plant's not loose, but I'm after getting enough up round this new growth here, which has got some relatively new roots. They're not too long. Round here they've grown on a bit, but nonetheless the roots are capable of branching. So, and I don't want them to dry out. So we'll pile the media up. Next time I water the plant, half of it will go over the side of the pot. But if necessary, we can top it up. Right, ugh. Mucky mitts. Now the problem is I've forgotten which of the larger zygos is which. This must be the Louisendorf because it's the one that wasn't in bloom. So this is the Louisendorf. Therefore the other larger one that went into two pieces was the one with the spikes on, which have now ceased to be. So we'll use this tag. I mean, I don't want that tag, but until I replace it, we'll at least know what the plant is. Now, am I going to water this? No, not today. But I will give it a good look tomorrow and the day after, because at some point it will dry out. And as it starts to dry out, I want to catch it before that, what you call it, stuff actually dries. So while it's still wet. Right, so that's one done. So these pieces are the Louisendorf then. As I say, I was a little disappointed that that piece separated off, but this is where the new growths are going to come from, these two growths. So either there or there, there or there, and a very rare occurrence it might be there and there. So we're going to get new growth here, not round the back. Yeah. So this piece can go on the end as though it was part of the plant. So it won't get in the way of the new growths coming off of here, and it will look like a new growth that was part of the plant, which is sort of how it was, even though it's a separate piece and it's just starting. Now that piece had a lot more roots just now, but it turned out that there were two bunches of roots tangled that weren't part of this piece. They just fell off under the tap, so not a lot of roots left there. This has got some good roots, that'll be okay. Right. So that type of pot will be too big, so we need to come down one. I'll go one bigger than that. Yeah, so this will be one of the new ones that were in as a gift. I'll try one of those. Now this has got an air cone in it, and when I put crocking in a pot that's got an air cone, I make sure that the groove around the air cone that goes right to the bottom of the pot, because the air cone sticks up in the middle, is crocked, and the media can't go down in there. That's your ventilation. Down that bit and then up through the centre, that's your ventilation. So now I don't think I'm going to have enough of this mix to do this plant, so I'd rather mix some more now than get halfway through and have to stop. So we'll get some more of this wet stuff out. In fact, we'll get all of it out, And then as we go along I will know whether I need to go and get some more. I will know quite quickly actually. Add some bark in again, bulks it up a bit. Proportions similar. No, a bit more bark. Yeah, it's about the same as I had before. And then we'll get some charcoal. Somewhere like that. As I said, it's with me, with the charcoal, it's hit and miss because I don't think there can actually be too much. Because it's in a pot, it's sort of inert. It has a job to do. It is supposedly capable of, you know, helping keep the media sweet by stopping any build-up of salts and things like that, which, bearing in mind charcoal is often one of the main ingredients in filters, you can see that it, you know, it does do that job pretty well, or it wouldn't get used for that, would it? So that's the principle of putting some in. But I haven't been doing it long enough, and it would be virtually impossible to prove one way or the other. You just wouldn't be able to, would you? You'd need a lab or something to be able to analyse the pieces of charcoal in a pot after a year or something like that. Am I bothered? No. Right, so that little piece is going to go there. Make sure the base of it is the same height. Again, those lower roots, if I push the plant down, they'll break. But if I twist the pot, they will follow the media round, and normally they don't break. Some of them still do. You know, they say these are brittle roots, fragile. And this is going a bit towards the back of the pot, so that there's plenty of room for the new growths, which I'm hoping on the larger part of the plant will come quite soon, now that the spikes are gone. The plant will react to those blooms being gone, which were its hope for survival, hormonal wise. You know, we've lost our ability to create seed. How can we recover from that? Well, we need some new growths to get some blooms out so that we can have another go at getting some seed. So that's the logic of why taking the blooms off can work quite well. Again, gently down the outside of the roots to give me a buffer, so that I can actually see I've actually got quite a gap there with some roots actually showing, which in a way is handy because that will allow me to monitor whether the old root system has died, has actually been lost as a consequence of the repot, which has happened to me before in the old days when we used to bully these into their pots. And I used to have a very open mix for these, you know, sort of more like a mix of large and medium bark. So I just looked, you know, I didn't do any work to find out, I was lazy. I just looked at the roots, and when you've got large, thick, fleshy roots like that, you don't normally go for a fine mix with your media. You tend to go for a chunky mix to go with the chunky roots. But if you now sort of appreciate that quite a lot of Zygopetalums are actually terrestrials, now you can see that those roots, if you look, you know, if you look back through the video or whatever, they're white. Yeah, well, that's not because they haven't seen any light. It's because that's the normal colour for terrestrial roots. You know, the epiphytic roots are a different colour, and they've often got green on them. Now this little piece here is not sitting up nicely, it's loose. So I'm going to have to get some stakes for that, just to hold it against the main plant. Otherwise those little root nubbins are going to break. So that's not sitting down very nicely at all, so I'll put some stakes in there to just hold that still. I'm going to have to do that now as well, because as soon as I move the pot it's going to fall over. I'll be back. I bought a handful because thinking ahead I can think of another plant that's probably not going to sit still either. So the idea is to just put a stake in leaning against the plant, and then put another one in at this side leaning against the plant, the other side of that leaf, so in between those two like that. And then we get a clip out of the cupboard. Have I got any grabby ones in here? If not, I'll have to go and get one. There's one. Sort of grabby one. And then where those stakes cross over like that, you push that cross a bit farther down and put a clip on it. And now the stakes are being pulled in towards the plant, and it just holds it reasonably still. So there we go, that's that one done, and that's the Louisendorf. You know, actually put the tag in the wrong one, didn't we? This is the Louisendorf, dopey. Therefore, this one over here is the no ID hybrid with the bluey coloured blooms that came from Burnham's. So that's that one done. Just hope that little piece may not make it, but the rest of the plant should okay. Yeah, that's looking okay. Right, that's two done. For the next one is the thing that's rather difficult to say. Warczewiczella, I was told, is how you pronounce it. So that's probably right. That particular genus was obviously discovered and described by somebody who came from a country where that word was a natural word. Whereas for me, it looks like somebody dropped the Scrabble board and just picked up the random letters and made them into a word, apart from the Ella bit on the end. But you know, the very fact that the W's are pronounced as V's, all that sort of thing, points you to a certain part of the world. Right, and all these three pieces I want in the same pot. See, in this day and age with Brexit, you know, this could be two pieces of this plant for a friend that would have a job to get it otherwise. But I'm going to be greedy and keep it. And this little piece here needs a bit more leaf trimming. We've got some pale ends. I still haven't really discovered why that's happening. It shouldn't logically be a nutrient deficiency. And then I've got one leaf tip with a black end. In other words, dieback. And this plant is obviously prone to it because somebody else has had a go at the leaves before I got it. Anyway, what size pot are we going to get this in? I'm going to try and get it in that one. Now this is related to zygos, hence the fragile roots. And again, you can see there's a high element of white coloration to these, but we do have growing root tips, including one that's decided to head for the sky. It's not going to make it. Right, so if I'm going to put three in here, three pieces, I suspect we will need stakes again for this. Chunky bits. So how are we going to arrange these then without... I can't go too mad because if I squash these together I'll break roots. And that's the new growth, that's the old part of the plant, so that's the bit that needs to be in the middle of all of the pieces, because that's already grown, it's new growth, it's unlikely to do it again. So I think we need to be something like that. That one needs to be a bit lower, preferably without breaking any roots. So something like that. Right, see if we can get that in. This is this pot is probably going to use the rest of this media, and I've still got one plant to go. Now at a pinch, the plant that's left could just go in small bark and charcoal, but it would need watering more often. I mean, effectively it is a Miltonia. You know, they don't have to be constantly wet, but this is going to use up the rest of this media for this one, which means putting some more into soak just for one tiny little plant. You never know, I might just about have enough left, because it is a tiny little plant and it is going in a tiny little pot. So I might get away with it. Now this particular plant, I believe, is either a terrestrial or a semi-terrestrial. A lot of the writings and ancient scrolls do recommend, you know, sort of larger, deeper pots to accommodate that type of grower. But I'm always very reluctant to repot into a very large pot. What I would rather do is repot into a smaller pot and wait for that root system to take off, and then just lift it out of that smaller pot, lower it into a bigger pot with some more media around the outside. That's what I would prefer to do for that sort of plant. I've got quite a nasty gap there, but I'll gently get some down into that area. Just about. Right, so that's that one done. 3 pieces. Roots very near the top, some of the new ones, but hopefully now they'll burrow down, because I was a bit worried that they were sitting on the top and not going down in the media. So again, we'll use the same label, there's nothing wrong with it. So much smaller pot now and fresh media. Let's see if that one gets going a bit. And then what's left is this tiny little one here, and by using this tiny little pot over here, we've got enough media. So that's going in there. And I will put a couple of pieces in there just to stop the bottom of the pot, because I've got very few roots on this plant. So, you know, it's the bottom of the pot is going to stay wet because the roots don't go down that far, at least for a while until they do. And with this plant, it's if they do, bearing in mind what it's got. You know, if this new growth is full of that, it's not going to grow very well anyway. So just tip that on there so that the new roots are in, but not being pressured, because the root tips will break. And then just backfill. You don't need too much around the back of the plant, there's no roots around there. The media needs to be where the roots are, around the front of the plant. And again, this doesn't need to be packed in tight. So we have got enough, just about. Hopefully just enough to keep that upright. Yes, good, without staking. Bonus. Right, that was a good guess with the media, wasn't it? It's always a guess, isn't it? Out the way, you out the way, you out the way. Hello, cat. Right, revisit the plants, and that'll be the end of this. Right, so the large zygo that strictly is 2 plants but was kept intact basically. It's staying as 2 plants tangled by the roots, pretending to be 1 plant. So we've got one new growth up here with roots progressing, another new growth here with roots progressing because it should have been repotted earlier, but should be okay, and then another brand new growth tucked in there with roots just starting, which will probably provide the bulk of the new root system just from that one little growth. So 2 progressing growths and another one just starting as a brand new growth. The progressing growths could in theory bloom, but guess what I'm going to do if they do? I will cut the spikes off. Remember, the plan for this zygo is to grow it into a large specimen sized plant with as many growths as possible, and then one day let it bloom. Bearing in mind, you know, I don't know whether the growths will push up 1 or 2 spikes per growth. Some zygos do prone towards 2, so that's that one then. That's just an OID hybrid. That's the one that had the bluey coloured blooms on, which several people have had a go at naming, and they may be right, but I don't think I've updated my notes yet. And then this is the Louisendorf. That's, I wouldn't say this is in a good way. This is not a really healthy plant. No, actually, I have got this the wrong way round. This is the, yeah, this is the one I've just cut the spikes off. I'll get this right in a minute. More coffee, nurse. That's the hybrid. So this must be the Louisendorf. There's got to be one way or the other. We'll soon tell next time it blooms. So if that's the Louisendorf, that is a good strong plant, which is good because I really like that one. If this is the bluey coloured one, this is the one I bought to try and grow on. This one, the Louisendorf, may take over. And then we've got our little Warczewiczella, timbiensis, a genus I'd never heard of. It was a gift, and the long-term plan for this is to actually get a seed pod and send it to the guy who's doing the seed library, basically. One day, maybe, we will get to there. And then this tiny little thing here has actually got, it's a Miltonia William Kirsch country garden. It has beautiful blooms, and I'd like to see them again. So the long-term future of this plant is dependent on me whacking that fusarium and stopping it. Well, that's relatively easy. I've done it many times before, and hopefully it's not too bad in that new growth, and that new growth's roots progress and don't stall because of the fusarium. If that happens, then it will be okay. So there we are. That's 4. There will be another kitchen session in the not too distant future, which will be the rest. There's 2 Masdevallias. Is there 2? Yeah, there's 2 Masdevallias to do. Not the one that came from mixed Masdevallias. I'm not playing with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's 2 others of those to do, and a few other oddities lying around that have just been in their pots long enough for me to want to get them out. So we'll have a look at those perhaps next week. So there we go. Hope you've enjoyed that. Kitchen Time Part 2. The info card for Part 1 is at the start of this video, which I should have said at the start, but I'll put a text pop up to say the info card's coming up. That way you can pause this one and watch Part 1 if you missed it first time round. So there we go. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.